Have you ever wondered what would happen if a life-saving vehicle turned into something deadly? What if an ambulance meant to carry hope and healing was secretly transporting destruction? And what would you do if you were the one who uncovered that terrifying truth? This is not just a story. This is a moment that could change everything. A moment where trust is shattered, and a leader is forced to make a decision that could save a nation or destroy it. It was a quiet evening, the kind that hides tension beneath its calm surface. The dusty roads stretched endlessly across the land, and the air carried a strange stillness, as if something was waiting to happen. Ibrahim Traoré stood near a temporary command post, his eyes scanning the horizon with the sharp awareness of a man who had seen too much betrayal to trust silence. Reports had been coming in for days, whispers, fragments, uneasy patterns. Rebel movements were increasing, yet there were no visible supply chains, no trucks, no convoys, nothing that explained how they were sustaining themselves. It didn't make sense, and when things don't make sense in a conflict zone, it usually means one thing: someone is hiding something. That's when the message arrived. An ambulance had been spotted, moving toward a restricted zone near rebel-controlled territory. At first, it seemed ordinary. Ambulances had been moving through these regions, delivering aid, evacuating the wounded. But this one, something about it felt wrong. It wasn't responding to any known emergency. No calls had been logged, no injured civilians reported. Why would an ambulance travel alone, at dusk, toward an area known for insurgent activity? Traoré didn't hesitate. He had learned long ago that hesitation costs lives. He ordered a small unit to prepare for interception. No sirens, no noise, just quiet precision. He would go himself. As the convoy moved through the dimming light, tension grew heavier with every passing minute. The road ahead curved between dry trees and abandoned structures, perfect places for ambushes. But this time they weren't the ones being hunted. They were the hunters. Then they saw it. The ambulance appeared in the distance, its white body faintly visible against the fading sunlight. It moved steadily, almost too steadily, as if it had nothing to fear. No flashing lights, no urgency, just a calm, deliberate pace. Why wasn't it speeding? Why wasn't it signaling distress? Traoré raised his hand, signaling the unit to slow down. His instincts were screaming now. Something wasn't right. The vehicles spread out, surrounding the ambulance from a distance. The driver must have noticed them by now. But instead of stopping, the ambulance kept moving. That was the moment everything changed. "Block it," Traoré ordered. One of the vehicles surged ahead, cutting off the road. The ambulance was forced to stop abruptly, dust rising around it like a curtain. Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating silence. No one stepped out. No medical personnel rushed forward. No cries for help. Just stillness. Traoré stepped out of his vehicle slowly, his boots pressing into the dirt with deliberate calm. His soldiers followed, weapons ready but controlled. This was still, technically, a medical vehicle. One wrong move could have consequences far beyond this road. He approached the driver's side. "Open the door," he commanded firmly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. The driver stepped out, hands raised, eyes avoiding direct contact. He looked nervous, not like someone used to saving lives, but like someone hiding something. "Where are you coming from?" Traoré asked. "Medical supply run," the driver replied quickly. "Where is your authorization?" A pause, a hesitation. I have it inside." That was enough. Traoré's gaze hardened. He motioned to his men. "Check the vehicle." One soldier moved toward the back doors of the ambulance. The metal handle clicked loudly in the silence as he pulled it open. And then, everything froze. There were no stretchers, no medical kits, no oxygen tanks. Instead, neatly stacked and carefully concealed beneath a thin layer of cloth were weapons, rifles, ammunition boxes, explosive materials, an ambulance carrying tools of war. For a split second, no one spoke. The reality of what they were seeing settled in like a shockwave. This wasn't just smuggling. This was deception at its most dangerous level. Using a symbol of life to deliver death, Traoré stepped closer, his expression unreadable, but inside a storm was building. How many times had this happened before? How many weapons had already reached rebel hands under the cover of humanitarian aid? And more importantly, who was behind this? "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice now colder, sharper. The driver stayed silent. One of the soldiers moved forward, pulling aside more coverings, more weapons, more proof. This wasn't a one-time operation. This was organized. Planned. Traoré's mind raced. If rebels were using ambulances, it meant they had support. Possibly from within. Someone with access. Someone who understood how to bypass checkpoints without suspicion. Trust had been weaponized. And that made this discovery even more dangerous than the weapons themselves. "Speak," Traoré said again, stepping closer to the driver. The man's hands trembled. Sweat formed on his forehead despite the cooling air. "You don't understand," he finally muttered. "Then make me understand. They said it was the only way. No one checks ambulances. No one questions them." That sentence hit harder than anything else. No one questions them. Because ambulances are supposed to be sacred, untouchable. A symbol that even war is supposed to respect. But that line had just been crossed. Traoré looked back at the vehicle, then at his men. This wasn't just an interception anymore. This was a revelation. If this operation continued, it could change the entire balance of the conflict. And now, he had a choice: expose it and risk escalating the situation, or keep it quiet and try to trace it back to its source. But time was running out. Because if one ambulance had made it this far, how many others were already on the road? The wind picked up slightly, carrying dust across the scene as if trying to erase what had just been uncovered. But this truth couldn't be buried. Not anymore. Traoré turned back to the driver, his eyes locked with a level of intensity that made it impossible to look away. "This ends tonight," he said. But deep down, he knew. This was only the beginning. The silence after that discovery didn't feel like relief. It felt like the calm before something far more dangerous. Because once a truth like this is uncovered, it doesn't just sit quietly. It spreads. It shakes systems. It exposes cracks that were never meant to be seen. Ibrahim Traoré stood still for a moment, staring at the open back of the ambulance. Weapons stacked where wounded bodies should have been. Death hidden inside something meant to save lives. His jaw tightened, not out of anger alone, but out of realization. This wasn't a random act. This was a system. A carefully built chain of deception. He turned sharply toward his men. "Secure everything." "No one moves without my order." The soldiers immediately surrounded the vehicle, their movements precise but tense. Every crate was now evidence. Every bullet a clue. But more than that, every second now mattered. Because if this ambulance was part of a larger network, then somewhere out there, others were still moving. Traoré stepped aside, pulling one of his most trusted officers closer. His voice dropped, calm but urgent. "We don't announce this. Not yet." The officer looked surprised. "Sir, this is big. People need to know." "They will," Traoré replied, his eyes still locked on the ambulance. "But not before we understand how deep this goes." That decision changed everything. Instead of a public revelation, this became a silent operation. A hidden war within a war. The driver was detained immediately. His hands were tied, but his mind was already unraveling. Fear had replaced whatever confidence he once had. He kept glancing at the ambulance, as if even he couldn't believe how exposed it had become. "Start talking," Traoré said, as he approached him again. "Names, routes, who gave the orders?" The driver shook his head at first, but the pressure was building, not from violence, but from the weight of being caught in something far bigger than himself. "You don't understand," he whispered again, his voice breaking. "Then explain it," Traore snapped. "They're everywhere," the driver said, his words trembling now. "Not just rebels, people inside, people who control routes, checkpoints, even paperwork. This isn't just smuggling, it's protected." That one word hung in the air. Protected. Traore's expression didn't change, but inside everything sharpened. That meant infiltration. That meant betrayal from within the very systems designed to prevent this. "Who?" he asked again. The driver hesitated, then slowly gave a name that made one of the nearby soldiers visibly stiffen. Traore noticed immediately. "You recognize it?" he asked. The soldier swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. That name. He's connected to logistics coordination. He's cleared multiple humanitarian routes in the past." Now the picture was forming, and it was worse than expected. This wasn't just rebels sneaking supplies. This was someone inside the system, opening the door for them. Traore turned away for a moment, looking out into the darkening horizon. The sun had almost disappeared now, leaving behind a deep orange glow that slowly faded into shadows. It felt symbolic.
Like the last light of trust was slipping away. "Prepare a secondary team," he ordered. "We move fast." The plan shifted instantly. This was no longer about one ambulance. This was about dismantling a network before it vanished. Within minutes, the convoy split. One group stayed behind to secure the evidence. The other, led by Traore himself, moved toward the next location, the place connected to the name the driver had given. The road ahead was darker now, lit only by headlights cutting through the night. Every turn felt heavier. Every passing minute increased the risk that someone, somewhere, might already know what had happened, because operations like this don't exist without communication. And if word got out, the entire network could disappear overnight. As they approached the location, a seemingly ordinary logistics checkpoint, everything looked normal, too normal. Guards were present. Documents were being processed. A few vehicles were parked nearby. Nothing about it screamed danger. But now Traore knew better. He stepped out of the vehicle, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. The guards straightened, surprised to see him there without prior notice. "Sir," one of them said nervously, "we weren't expecting—" "Exactly," Traore interrupted. His eyes scanned every detail, the vehicles, the faces, the subtle movements. He had learned to read tension, to sense when something was off, and right now, it was everywhere. "Call your supervisor," he ordered. A brief hesitation. Then the guard nodded and reached for his radio. Moments later, a man emerged from one of the buildings, calm, composed, too composed. He walked toward Traore with a polite but controlled expression. "Captain," he said, "to what do we owe the visit?" Traore didn't respond immediately. He simply stepped closer, close enough that the man could feel the weight of his presence. Then he spoke, quietly but with absolute authority. "An ambulance was intercepted tonight. For the first time, a crack appeared, just a flicker, but it was enough. Carrying weapons," Traore continued. "Silence." The guards shifted slightly, the air tightened, and your name came up. Now the calm was gone, not completely, but enough to reveal what was underneath. The man exhaled slowly as if calculating his next move. "You're making a serious accusation," he said carefully. "I'm making a statement of fact," Traore replied. For a moment, it seemed like the situation could go either way: denial, resistance, or something worse. Then suddenly, a sound, a vehicle engine roaring to life behind the checkpoint. Traore turned instantly. One of the trucks was moving fast. "Stop it!" a soldier shouted, but it was already accelerating, crashing through a side barrier and speeding into the darkness. That was the confirmation. "Go," Traoré commanded. Chaos erupted. Soldiers rushed to their vehicles. Engines ignited. Dust exploded into the air as the pursuit began. The night swallowed the fleeing truck, but the chase was on. Traoré jumped into the lead vehicle, his focus locked ahead. This was no longer just about evidence. This was about catching the truth before it escaped. The road became rough, uneven, dangerous. The truck ahead swerved violently, trying to lose them. But Traoré's convoy stayed closer. Then gunfire. Shots rang out from the fleeing vehicle. Bullets cut through the night, forcing the pursuing soldiers to adjust. This wasn't just an escape. This was a desperate attempt to protect something. "Do not let it get away," Traoré shouted. The distance narrowed. The truck hit a sharp turn, nearly losing control, but recovered. For a moment, it looked like it might actually escape. Then Traoré made a decision. Cut it off. One of the vehicles surged forward, taking a risky path across rough terrain. The engine roared in protest, but it held. Within seconds, it reappeared ahead of the truck. The trap was closing. The truck had nowhere to go. It swerved, lost control, and overturned violently, crashing into the dirt with a deafening impact. Silence followed. Then smoke. Traoré stepped out slowly, his weapon ready, his eyes fixed on the wreckage. This was it. The moment where everything hidden would finally be exposed. As the soldiers approached and pulled open the damaged cargo area, what they found inside didn't just confirm their fears, it proved that the ambulance was only a small piece of something much bigger, something far more dangerous. And now, there was no turning back.